Hello, welcome to When Legends Talk, a book by the legend of Savage Machine, the original Mexican metal band from Northern California. Just a word of caution, this book contains topics and scenarios that may be triggering to some people. Discretion advised. Chapter 4. The Egg. I was born in Guadalajara, Mexico, in the mid 70s as an unwanted little brother to a big sister. I say that facetiously since that is pretty much normal among young children. The fact that you are the only one of importance and sole proprietor of mom's love and affection for the whole first year of your life, and then some random kid swoops in and takes that away from you cannot be easy to accept or get accustomed to at any age, let alone to a 1 year old. I heard some stories of her trying to get rid of me that are quite comical to me, especially considering we grew to be very close as kids. According to my mom's recollection, I was very sickly as an infant. She estimates I was about 8 or 9 months old and had massive diarrhea with blood. She would take me to the doctor, but the doctor would not believe it, said I was too young for that to be happening. The doctor would prescribe something and send us away. But I just got increasingly worse. One particular night, must have been around 10 o'clock, she stopped at Grandma's to drop off my older sister because she was headed to take me to the doctor once again. Grandma thought I was already dead because I was basically just skin and bones at that point. But then she saw the slightest movement of my mouth. Grandma's neighbor was also there and asked my mom what was going on. My mom told her about the bloody stool and that I had been going on for a while, then walked to the hospital. The doctor pretty much told my mom that I only had a few hours to live and that she should take me home to let me die. Mom returned to Grandma's house to pick up my older sister and saw the neighbor lady once again. When my mom told the neighbor lady what happened with the doctor, she told my mom to hang on for a bit and made some home remedy that she fed to me, but it came right out the other end just like every other time. She gave my mom a little bit of milk and told her to feed me in a couple of hours, but only a little bit. My mom took me home, sat next to the crib, and passed out from the stress, exhaustion, and depression of the situation. She was awakened by the faintest of sounds that was barely audible. She noticed my mouth moving like I was looking to feed, and she fed me 1 ounce of milk, which stayed down. A couple of hours later, fed me again, and so on until I fully recovered and have been fully healthy stomach wise since then. I was very high energy and loved to sing, even though I was terrible at it. In Mexico at that time, it was common to have appliances with exposed wires. We had something like that in the kitchen, and I would often get close to it. Mom would tell me to stay away, but how could she explain a shocking hazard to a child? So she would tell me if I got too close, it would bite me. Being curious as a cat, I touched it. Of course, I got the shock of my life and yelped like a battered puppy. Mom called out with concern, ¿Qué pasó? What happened? Me mordió. It bit me, I answered in terror. The neighbor lady used to watch us while Mom went to work and we would play with her kids. Her son and I used to climb the fence, which during that time was basically a cement wall that divided the patios between houses. Until one day I fell off the fence and the neighbor lady thought it would be best if Mom made other arrangements instead. I also remember there was a lavadero, which was a place to wash laundry. They were usually made of cement about waist high and had two spaces on it. One was to wash clothes, and the other was shaped like a holding tank for water. I remember my sister and I both sitting on it so we could bathe and were giggling about I don't know what. Next thing I know, I just saw sky and I hit the ground. I must have thrown my head back in laughter like I often did and lost my balance until the ground helped me find it again. Also, I remember my sister and I playing house, the whole mom and dad thing. I would wear my dad's sombrero de charro and have some kind of lunch box type thing. I'm home from work, I would announce. My sister would chime in without hesitation. The kids were terrible today. Not to brag, but we were cute as hell. I don't remember much about when my younger sister was born, but mom was in the hospital for 3 days during her birth due to complications, and dad was nowhere to be found. I do recall she had meningitis as an infant. She was in the hospital for some days, and mom would go see her every day. Dad would sometimes get paranoid and lock her up in the bedroom so she couldn't go to the hospital because, in his mind, my little sister did not resemble him and was therefore not his child. The doctors said she would never be able to talk. All she did was scream and try to eat anything she found, worms, bugs, glass, whatever she found. We had to constantly watch her, not only because she talked now, but she is bilingual and very creative. The only job I remember dad having was at a Japanese restaurant. When he worked there, life was good for a while because we had everything we needed. But that was short-lived. He started coming home late on paydays or sometimes not at all. He would show up the next day wearing someone else's clothes, mismatched shoes, all tattered and torn, saying he got mugged every payday. Sometimes mom would go to the restaurant looking for him because he wouldn't come home at all. One day, he told mom that his boss wanted to come over for dinner and he thought it would be a good idea because it could mean furthering his career at the restaurant. Turns out dad's boss wanted to sleep with mom and dad was trying to arrange it. Ironic that dad was so extremely jealous, yet he was trying to arrange this. My mom would go off to work and leave us with dad, but he would leave shortly after and we stayed locked up in the house. The electricity, gas, and water were shut off, and the door was locked from the outside for our safety. We assumed dad was also going to work, but he was actually going to spy on mom because he was convinced that mom was having an affair. It's difficult to imagine what mom felt finding us like that when she returned from work, but it was the only way since there was no one to watch us during that time. I recall she would come home with a tiny piece of meat and tortillas to make the best soup I can remember. Even though I had nothing but a tiny bit of meat and water, it tasted like heaven to us. Another food I remember that I thought was gourmet was sopa de fideo with banana slices, which would be like Mexican noodle soup with bananas. It was extremely rare for mom to have any money left after buying groceries, but it happened, so mom would tell us to pick something to buy. My sister would pick a candy bar that was popular at the time named Carlos Quinto. I ran off and returned cupping one single egg in my hand. That's what you want? Mom questioned, and I nodded with excitement. Are you sure that's all you want? I nodded confirmation. Needless to say, it was very obvious that I was a little weirdo already. I didn't care what was popular, I knew what I liked. At night, my mom would get us ready for bed by teaching us to pray. She would recite a prayer for us to repeat. Cuatro esquinas tiene mi cama. Cuatro ángeles la están cuidando. Aquí San Juan, aquí San Pablo, aquí San Pedro y aquí nuestro amo. An exact recollection of us repeating after my mom, Niño Jesús, Niño Jesús, sal del capón, baja la pata, baja la pata. Mom would laugh. Translation to that would be, baby Jesus, come out of the capon, come out of the capon, put your foot down, put your foot down. And mom would laugh. Sometimes the boiler would not work, so we had to use cold water for everything, including bathing. I was not a fan of that at all. During one of those times, I told my mom that one day I would have lots of money and would buy her a boiler as tall as a skyscraper. The happiest times I can remember were when we lived with mom's sister for a while. She had kids that were similar in age to my sisters and me. We lived in an apartment complex that was run down except for one room. It was a long stretch of units on one side and open space on the other. On the side of the open space was a wall that was falling apart. My cousin and I used to love climbing on it and jumping off. While we were doing that one time, I remember cousin jumped off and flew right into a clothesline, nearly hanging himself. Since he was unharmed, we thought it was hilarious. The place had an area that had 5 or 6 narrow doors that happened to have toilets inside. We would all hide inside the doors, and one of us would stay outside, knocking on each door. The kid behind the door would ask who it is, and the kid on the outside would make up some random person, and we all laughed hysterically. I think it's safe to say that we were happy kids despite all that was going on. That was due to my mom. She always found some way to make us laugh or smile. I've always wondered where she found the strength to put forth that type of energy for us. I'm 100% sure that is where I get my humor. Although it has evolved to its own monstrously terrible humor, it has roots to this hilarious, legendary woman.